a month. Yeah, here we are, June, LPC. So glad to be here. So, Sharon's going to be joining us too, right? Hi, Christine. How are you?
Yes, I believe Sharon's joining us.
Okay.
In person, so.
We could just charge ahead though, and our first order of business was to approve the lovely minutes that Barbara had a month ago you sent to us. So the April minutes are in your email. We can.
Approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. We don't have anybody participating virtually, so that's, we don't need to do a roll call. That's cool. And then the second order of business was to just kind of recap town meeting. I made a very brief little, announcement about where we're at with it all. No one threw any tomatoes at me, so that was okay.
She did a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and just before we charge right in, we have a second before Sharon joins and everything. I thought it was worth actually kind of, because we didn't meet, to kind of think about what if anyone went or went to some of it or participated in, thought about it kind of as it related to our process.
About town meeting? You know, I thought your report was good.
Thank you. Thank you for not throwing tomatoes at
Let's
me.
leave it at that.
Your report was fine.
Yeah, right, what am I gonna say?
What happened at town meeting the first night was just sort of a lesson in how not to go to town meeting, you know, how things can go wrong. And
Tell us, because I actually had professional duties in the ER, so I had to leave. So I wasn't there as long as I was planning to be there the whole time, and then I was needed.
Yeah, well, the selectmen, you know, put the petitioned articles that Patrick Auden had filed on high up in the agenda, which is usually they put them at the end, but they didn't this time. And the place was packed with opponents to it.
It's hot in there, physically very hot.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a big town meeting. There were a lot of people there. And it was a very mean-spirited debate.
Yep.
You know, it really was. I mean, regardless of how you feel about the merits of you know, what was presented.
I.e. the Girl Scouts being.
Yeah, shouting down Girl Scouts. I mean, that
Wait,
was.
that happened?
It did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was in Florida, I missed
It was
it.
reported in
Terrible.
the newspaper, yeah,
Yeah,
online,
yeah, it was really unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I guess the other lesson to draw from it is that process matters. And what primarily Leo Kukunis and all of the people who were sort of backing him, they all made the case that this had not gone through sufficient process, that there had not been enough public hearing, there hadn't been a formal public hearing, even though there'd been several public meetings about it.
And you're referring some of the things like tree cutting and that kind of stuff.
The
Pesticide, the tree cutting.
Tree cutting, yeah.
pool, even the pool, went down in flames. So, all of those articles got defeated. And then, of course, when we finally got through all of them, a lot of people got up and left. And which can happen in town meeting. If there's something that people don't like, they come just for that thing, and then they leave.
It surprised me a little bit too, because just last year, the whole balloon plastic thing, you know, which you could
It
kind of
passed,
lump
yeah.
together, so to
Yeah.
speak, you know, it surprised me. Those had passed.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that we do lots of preparatory
Yep.
public education before we bring
Yep.
the plan to town meeting. And also, you know, work with the administration to make sure that it's in a place on the warrant, that it's going to get, you know, full discussion by, you know, all of the people who might like to be part of it. Putting things at the very end is usually a bad thing, because the crowd dwindles.
Yeah.
And if people are there for that one thing, you know, if they've got a beef about something, sometimes they can have undue influence.
Well, I think we can do the electronic voting next time, right?
Yeah, I don't
We
know
voted.
about that, yeah.
I think, didn't we vote that the second night that we were gonna do that?
Yeah.
Because realistically, that night was just a matter of who had the, I don't wanna say bigger mouth, louder voice
Yeah.
versus everybody
Literally.
else. And it was intimidating.
Yeah,
It was very intimidating, I thought.
Although,
Not that I'm intimidated very easily, but
Yeah. If the mean spirit, yeah.
on the pool petition, they did a standing count.
They did the what?
They did a
Standing count.
standing count.
There were a few
Yes.
standing counts, yeah.
Yeah.
there were a couple, three.
So the pool went down.
But,
I
you
mean,
know,
but, and it's a little bit like, what does that even mean? Because, yeah, I mean, it's public sentiment, okay, a biopsy at a particular time.
Topically speaking, do we come up as a warrant, or are we before the warrants? I mean, how does this
no,
LCP
it
come
will
up?
be an article on the town meeting warrant.
I would hope we are just, which is reiterating what Margot was saying, that I hope we are as uncontroversial as
Yeah,
possible.
well, I mean, you
but,
just,
yeah.
you'll know. I mean, if you do the public hearings beforehand, if there's some, you know, like what happened in Brewster, there was one article, I mean, there was
And it
one
voted down for one article.
component that, you know, one recommendation in it about Wing Island and, you know,
The boardwalk.
creating a boardwalk
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Drummer Boy Park out
Yes,
there.
yeah.
And that was very unpopular, and the whole plan was voted down because of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you gotta pay attention.
We're gonna keep trucking. That's why it's probably the only reason I keep checking social media, to be quite candid.
Oh,
yeah.
you're right.
Clearly also, you know, the three articles that caused all the controversy, they were essentially entirely created by one person,
Right.
That's right.
by himself. He just, you know,
Well, but he had a series of public meetings about them and, you know, gone around and.
Well, it's not like it's the first time that either two of the three articles have come up before.
Yeah,
I mean, pesticides and fertilizer, I mean, it's been talked about for years, and
And towns have very similar ordinances around,
have passed in other towns,
Correct,
yeah.
correct. They're not, I mean, you could disagree with them, but I wouldn't say they're totally out of left field or something.
no.
Right, you can, of course, it's beyond our deliberation here, but, okay, so recap of town meeting as relates to LPC. Anything, that was a good one. Is anybody else?
One thought
wanna
as
weigh
it
in?
relates to us,
Yes.
we should give some thought to early next year to start communicating now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get articles in the paper, just,
Yeah.
I think we ought to have a planned,
Agreed.
set of initiatives that get the word out.
And part of this is, why we're in the fall, as we have more to show, as we're creating this, specific goals and recommendations as they pertain to the town committees. Christine's gonna help us get out there and really socialize that, and make sure we're on point.
but there was another petition article that didn't have any public hearings per se, was presented at a couple of meetings, the housing one I put together.
Yeah,
I put it together
Yeah.
by myself. Of course, I had been asked by two of the selectmen, our state senator and
Yeah.
our state rep to put it together. Leo stood up and said, well, this didn't go through the process, we ought to vote it down, but it passed. overwhelmingly,
so not a
you
ton
know,
of rhyme or reason in one sense, like one way or
No.
the other. Yeah, interesting.
So,
Okay,
Weird night.
They always are.
next year I'll make sure I'm not on call. It's good to put it on the calendar now. All right, charging through our agenda, we've done A and B, woohoo. I tried to narrow down a little bit, we have our agenda, C, D, E here, we're gonna try, and I think you guys understood, we're gonna try and not be wordsmiths tonight, but kind of focus on some big ideas. And to that point, Sharon, as we launch kind of into these specific articles. Hello, how are you, by the way? Welcome. Could you tell us just a little bit about like the tech process so that we can kind of be smooth going forward in terms of reviewing this stuff? What your proposed the workflow would be about the PDFs? 'Cause I think that will help a lot.
Oh, the PDFs.
Yeah.
Well, that's just one, that would be one way that, I'm sorry, switch glasses, that we could, the committee, we and you and Christine, like universally could
Yes.
share one document and make comments in one
I
document.
think that would be wise.
You
Yeah.
could also use Google Docs,
No,
but the,
yeah.
the PDF is, I mean, once you get used to using it, it's, you can add there are little comment boxes or a couple little tools to use.
And is it like cloud-based so
Yeah,
that
it's
we all
cloud-based.
just have the same link
You all have the same.
for these different sections?
Yeah,
I think
yes.
that's probably
So
what we should do.
that is something we could do, in
Would you
terms of
agree, Gary?
sharing,
And that's different from what this was? Like,
Yeah, this we're just flying files around and is very cumbersome. I mean, it's just we don't get to see sequentially.
Right. But if you have multiple reviewers, you got multiple.
Right, so so the process, what I did is I had kind of assigned based on your subject, you were spared this time. but-
section.
Yeah, kind of assigned a section based on your SME area and kind of, so basically like a subcommittee, reviewed it, sent the comments back, but there's like multiple files flying around and it's hard to follow.
yeah. So that's definitely something we can do in the future. I'd also, if you wouldn't mind, be happy to talk a little bit about just process of preparing these and, we got a lot of feedback on content, style,
Sure.
writing and so forth,
Yeah.
so.
Ed
like
wants
to
to say
provide some
something and then you
feedback
want
on
to tell
that?
us about that? Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So on the PDF, it would be sent out to everybody?
It would be a link to
Link.
a document, it's in the cloud.
Okay, I
Right.
could go on and I could add something to it?
The easiest way to do it, like it'd be difficult for you to edit it, but you could make comments in the comment boxes, kind of like the way you do with track changes in Word.
Okay,
And then we can see everyone's comments all in the same document.
okay, so you could see, but if, we have a meeting now and not another meeting in a month, and so next week you send out one of these documents and I put a comment on, and then a day later, Garrett opens it up, does he see my comment?
Yes,
Well, that's
So-
the problem,
okay, yeah, that's a good point.
because he'll see
Open
my
meeting law.
problem and it's basically having
Comment
a
on a comment on a
conversation
comment.
Yes,
in the cloud,
yeah, you make a
not
good point.
during a,
How
Why
have
is that a
other
problem?
towns done this?
Well, I mean, they've kind of done it the old-fashioned way, with the Word document, then either, the committee, like you're doing now, meets, gives us feedback, and/or there's a subcommittee that, does that same function, gives us feedback, we do another, round of revisions and get it back to you, and then you
Yeah.
react to the second draft. So that's the traditional way.
I hear you, Ed, but also, is there a way to ask Christine or both of you, is there a way to like meet that open meeting law, but
Allow for one place to collaborate, like in terms of
Can I
like,
make a suggestion?
sure.
Just to follow the open meeting laws, and again, just have it as you did. You assigned the SMEs to whatever you felt their topic was. They can collaborate back and forth, between the two, so you can delegate the same document out to two people, and then combine. You'll
so
be
it's not
sharing
a
that
quorum?
we'll put it together.
Yeah, which is why I don't understand what Ed's comment.
Well, you were saying, it's a great nuanced point, so I think it's the quorum of deliberation, so
Two people.
what two people could then
That's
probably
fine.
comment on
You're
the,
commenting and Garrett's commenting, and it's a conversation between you and Garrett and the document writer. How is that a violation?
It isn't.
It's not.
it isn't if there's a quorum, but that's, if there's,
that isn't
It's a
a
subcommittee.
violation because we as a body didn't create those subcommittees. if we said, okay, me and Garrett are gonna do housing, and Barbara and you are gonna do open space, then each time you
Okay.
got together, you would have to notice a meeting. Because you are designated as a subcommittee of this committee.
But we're not designated as
But
as
we did
subcommittees. We
do
just
that.
had a sort of
There's no
informal.
formal, right.
As a matter of fact,
yeah.
I didn't stumble
Yeah, no.
across your comment that Dave and I would be
No,
commenting
it's
on
fine.
it.
It's all good.
this
It's all
afternoon.
good. I guess I'm really respectful of the premise, but we also can't have multiple files flying around and keep this moving forward. So I guess maybe from the consensus of the discussion is to keep away from a quorum, keep it informal by topic, so not everybody is commenting on sections, because that's a quorum. I get that. I get what you're saying, but if we keep, but you have a counter thought.
No, I don't. Actually, I've certainly worked that way in the past, and that the subcommittee, is kind of delegated that responsibility, so to speak, to review the initial draft, provide feedback, get it back,
Yeah.
make another.
This will all
and
be
then the
discussed
full
here.
committee
Yes, review.
vets the-
Correct.
the
Correct.
revised
Correct.
draft.
I
So-
can live with that. Can you live with that, Christine? Okay. In the spirit of I think we would love the PDF links.
Okay.
That
well,
would
we
be
can-
amazing.
We can explore that for the.
That would be amazing.
The
'Cause,
next, the next.
otherwise,
set.
Garrett or I will have to become our full-time job to maintain
sure we
these
don't need
files.
advanced
Yes,
copy
you've got little ones.
I literally was like, oh, good thing Joyce is here.
The reason I'm asking you, because all right. So we'll.
Okay, we'll
Cool.
try that out and see
Yeah.
if that.
Yes,
that
I would,
works.
and I would really appreciate if T&B could help it with us, because then we don't have to do it on the Google Drive side, which then
Sure,
just gets
yeah,
to be
'cause that-
fairly labor intensive.
Yeah,
So
that is, I'm sure.
yeah,
The second is I just would like to, start off.
Yeah,
these,
tell us.
Sections just by explaining sort of the process that we go through and the limitations of that. So, we got some feedback that looked like junior staff had prepared these and so forth. Well, I just want to explain that, actually, yes, we have a mix of junior and senior staff.
Sure, yeah.
And because of, just due to budget considerations and we have to initiate some sort of draft at a first level, understanding that we're not gonna capture everything. You all know, you're the experts in your community.
Right.
There are certainly gonna be things that we're gonna miss or get wrong, and that's the idea of the first draft. We get something out on paper for you to react to, and then we go from there, and it's an iterative process. Another way we could approach this, and we are using a template that is designed to meet the commission requirements and be streamlined and all of those good goals. But we could approach, new sections or next sections to come in a different way if you'd prefer. If you'd prefer to have, you have your two-person subcommittees provide input beforehand, or, before we start to write those on key issues, key topics to consider. We're doing what we can with basically secondary research, either reports that exist in town, the website, or other, resources that we can find online, so it is limited.
No,
So just giving you a little explanation as to why, they aren't more fully developed or perhaps consistent in coverage than they are. Some are gonna be longer or shorter than others, they're not all gonna be the same length either, so.
I personally was appreciative of just getting anything down, to be honest.
that's the-
And
that's the idea.
it's a place to start.
You have to start somewhere.
And I think,
yeah.
and I meant it when I sent my email this morning, kind of generally mapping where were we going to go, that we're headed in the right direction. And
Sure.
I think we all hold this, we're deeply grateful for your help and your expertise, and Ty and Bonds and Christine's, and we're all in this together. So and the process onwards we go. I think we're doing fine with that.
Great.
And I think,
So
yeah.
but if you want to consider another approach, we're totally open to it. Happy to work at your direction, that's why we're here.
So the way we're proposing to do this, nobody is going to read front to back with providing comments throughout the whole thing.
Well, eventually we'll get there.
Eventually you will. I mean, you will, and the full committee will see all of the sections. It's just that if you want to have a subcommittee take the first crack at the first draft,
Yeah.
rather than everybody reviewing it, that's really your choice.
Did we just not do that?
We did.
You don't have to do
We
that.
did do it. We kind of left it open, but as we're, and you know, like if some committee members were very motivated and reviewed all the sections, and some people, stayed right on their, whatever, just the task I gave them, and we have no open meeting law violation because they were all sort of reviewed in silo. But going forward, as we're trying to harness some technology to have a single use of files, which is, I think, the only way you can do a project of this magnitude in 2024. But also, so we're not, like, what Ed, we've kind of come into the consensus with, on those PDF files, it'll be small groups reviewing the files until we have a big deliberation on the file that's public.
Okay. One other question is, all the other data, that meetings we've had with everybody, are we supposed to be sending that to you, or what are we doing with all of our notes that we wrote up from everything, and where does that get utilized?
Notes from.
Like meeting with the different, like.
Yeah, they're all,
the,
so that, all our,
Ministers.
all our community outreach is all in the Google Drive,
Okay,
which they have access to.
okay.
Okay.
So you're gonna grab all of that stuff.
Yes.
We can, and perhaps we should be making more use of that, as a tool.
Let's
So,
let's
that's
delve
good
let's
feedback.
let's delve in. I think it's
Yeah.
great, and you have access to that drive.
Yes. Mhm.
Just being mindful of time, and we have a few more things to get through. But yes, Jim.
Could you remind me again when we hope to have this done?
I'll let
The
Sharon go.
full plan to town meeting, next May, is town meeting in May?
May.
Yeah,
May.
May.
So- Okay, so that's,
But
With a-
we gotta keep working, man.
with a-
We're in it right now.
Get it
With a
done well
draft
before
plan
that.
by
Yeah.
the end of the calendar year,
Yeah.
a,
I'd like to have it
a full
done.
draft,
We gotta
Yep.
socialize it.
yeah.
Yep.
Because then, right, then you can get out and, as you say, socialize
Have-
it, have more public meetings on it and so forth.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's, unless there's any more important debate on that, let's drill down here to land use. Again, keeping, knowing that we're gonna be wordsmithing, we're gonna be polishing all the things that, this is gonna go through a very thorough, I wanted to stay on the big ideas and kind of looking at what the individual reviewers had said. I will just kind of put a few things out there and then we can open it up. And I'm gonna try to mindful of time, so if we have 2040, we have 3 sections we definitely like to get through, and potentially a 4th, and we have 90 minutes. 90 divided by 4 is 20, 40, 60, 80, so we'll try and say 20 minutes on each. Let's see what we can do, folks. I mean, knowing that we're gonna come back and just trying to move this whole process forward.
On land use,
Yes.
is it okay if I provide just a little sort of
Please.
introduction on?
Tell
on
us about land
the
use.
Purpose of
Yes.
this section.
Please.
So, land use, ironically, for a local comprehensive plan that's focused on land use, there's no requirement under the regional plan to have a land use section. So what we've been doing is providing this, I'm calling it like a, background section on Harwich today. Where do you stand today with regard to land use, zoning, that sort of thing. So this section doesn't have a goal or necessarily policies associated
Got it.
with it.
Got it.
Because of that. So there's no regional goal other than the vision and the
So
growth
it's setting the
policy.
stage and giving the history.
Exactly, yeah, of how Harwich got to be where it is today with regard to land use and development. And this one is a little different.
I know, I appreciate that thoroughly, and that will guide the discussion a little bit. The kind of what I wanted to start with, and we get everyone's thoughts too. Margot had really picked out, and I think it's worth drilling down on the categories of land use. There's probably an opportunity for some more specificity there. Like 22, I'm remembering 22 or 24% of land in town was categorized as miscellaneous. I was like, we should understand what miscellaneous is.
Well, I mean, it is a big category, and I think I followed up in the email saying that it might require meeting with the assessor to track that down.
Yeah.
Christina and I and others that table took an inordinate amount of time
I
to
can
create
imagine,
because.
but you know, it's like
um,
fascinating, there's some hard data, like,
Yes.
that we should really
Yeah.
probably what are we drilling down on? Like,
Yeah.
some hard data, that's
Right,
probably
Right, well,
Right,
that,
same
yeah,
time.
it's
drilling down.
right, I mean, so that probably will require some follow-up to figure that out, so, yeah, the categories, there were so many land use categories, right, Christine, that we did the best we could, at least
get
to
it.
generalize them, but I don't have the answer to that question right now, but,
But it is such
We'll
a
put a
big one.
stake in the sand,
Mm.
we should have a flag and a
Right.
question.
Yeah. Okay,
Second
so-
largest.
Usually,
yeah,
miscellaneous usually refers to parcels that are either owners unknown,
yeah,
or they are parcels that the assessor's office has a deed for, but they don't have a map. They don't
Mhm.
have, they can't locate it on the ground.
Close to a quarter of Harwich is being categorized as
Yeah,
miscellaneous.
Yeah, well, and that is, I mean,
important
this
to
is a
know.
big problem.
Yeah, well, that's cool,
Harwich.
we just wanna know it.
Yeah, it is.
Important
It
to
is.
know.
yep, okay, what
So,
other, yeah,
The Real Estate and Open Space Committee has been grappling with this for years now,
Mm-hmm.
trying to.
And maybe there isn't more of an answer, but we should at least say why
Find
that there
out.
isn't more of an
Yep.
answer.
yes, absolutely.
Is there a way to like visually map that to like at least a good portion of miscellaneous? Like if you guys have been doing it from a land use
Good.
perspective, I would just think visually, like if you look at Harwich and you're trying to look at all the 7 villages, like where does that miscellaneous makeup sit?
Right.
And is it continuous? Is it disparate?
No,
So I think it could be helpful.
it's all over the place.
It's all
Well,
over-
but
it's all
that's
over the
important
place,
to
but
show, too.
Actually, the Real Estate Committee has, one of the members of that is Dave Callahan, who has done some really great mapping. And we should put you in touch with Dave,
Okay.
because
You
his
should.
maps are really way better than anything the assessor's office.
So real estate, there's a real
Yeah.
estate committee,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
I can send you
Yeah.
Dave's
Okay.
contact
Yeah.
information,
Yeah.
because he gave Erica some information as well
Yes.
related to
Yeah.
maps.
The other thought about this
Okay.
table
Real estate.
is how does this change over time? If this is a current state, what did it look like 20 years ago? Or is there another point in time that we refer to? Because I was one of the reviewers of this section, and one of the things that jumped out at me at a few of the tables was, how has this evolved? Because this is setting the table for, how has Harwich changed?
What's
How
the
are-
trajectory?
Yeah, how did we get to where we are? Where are we?
Maybe the older comprehensive plans might have
I was gonna
something.
say, that would be the only source when we can look at that,
Well, sorry.
yeah.
You had something to say?
Yes. Just considering what was said before, that it really is our responsibility to move this forward in an educational process so that people really understand the plan. And that's how I kind of look at everything, and understanding that this is a first draft. And when I see 23% popping out at me, there needs to be clarification. And also as to what Brian was saying, seeing those, most people will look at information, basic raw data, and it will go over their head until it's explained to how it affects them. So that's the suggestion, as far as not to wordsmith it, but to really frame the information so that people can digest it and they understand how it relates to them. That way they'll be educated up to the point of having those hearings, understanding where the process was, how that it relates to them all together.
And on
Like-
that, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was gonna say, like, for me, you have residential, single-family, multifamily, and then down to table 1.2, we have group quarters to tourist homes. Where does all this Airbnb and everything else fall into, which is creating a huge change in this town? Is that a tourist home? That used to be like,
No, they'll probably show up just as single
So
family.
Single
homes.
that
family.
was actually, so that was, there was, to pick up on it, that was kind of part of my, the probably a small language as we revive this is, to think about, seasonal homes or second homes, whatever I don't actually what the correct term is in this kind of, that are, we could maybe say, to your point, Barbara, use unknown, that, may have some sort of rental component that may have,
well, when Garrett talks about trajectory for moving forward, that in itself is creating a big change in Harwich as far as housing affordability for people that live here year-round and stuff.
Yeah, and the one thing, to your point, you can get the data on the registered homes for short-term rentals via state, I believe.
We, just a couple, last week received information from the Department of Revenue, so there were just under 1,100 short-term rentals.
How many?
Just under 1,100.
But nobody registers.
short-term
Half of them don't
rentals
register.
In the
town of Harwich.
state, yeah, but to do it relatively legitimately, and at some point you can crack down on that stuff, but like, I have one, right? I register, I go through the state, that's how I do it. And there's a process around it, and I think Brewster just, they evaluated who registered on their town, I think it was Brewster, on their town site versus what was in the state, and they were off by like 800 or 900 homes, and so they're like, huh, what is this,
Yeah.
right? So I
And I
think
dare say that's true here, too.
it probably is.
Yeah, to try to, a lot of people don't register them with the town.
Correct, and that's an issue that the building department and the zoning compliance officer and myself have been discussing.
Working.
have
So,
been
and to
discussing
the
in
point of,
terms getting that information, and just reminding members of the community that they're obligated to register not only with the state, but also with the town.
Yeah.
And there's the tax on short-term
Yeah.
rentals,
Yeah,
right?
it's the
So
state.
people are
Yes.
breaking the tax law if they're not reporting.
yeah, well, they're reporting to the state. So
Well,
I guess to the point of data about land use, that would be something, since that's hot, but
If we can
we're
get
just
it.
getting it, we should probably go in that too.
If we can get it. And
They're also, they're also, you know, they're breaking the tax law on the short-term rental tax, but a good portion of them are probably also violating their income tax.
Income federal.
Because they're flying it
so
off the books.
To,
what they're doing.
to this, as we were working out on the categories, I think you've heard us about the miscellaneous, and we get it, it's not perfect, but like, we wanna articulate that. And then Margot had also put it in, there, and I think Barbara as well, where, open spaces, drilling down a little bit on open spaces, developable versus protected, I think was an important point of like,
so more,
Which is data that the town assessors may not have.
Yeah.
You know, they might have it for some parcels and not for others. So that's, I don't know if the assessor's office is the best data source for that. It might be better, I know like the Kepka Commission and the Association to Preserve Cape Cod have both done studies of how much protected land there is versus, you know, remaining developable land.
Yeah, I think that nothing recently.
Yeah.
I looked at that, yeah.
and to say that the
Yeah.
challenge with all these different angles of statistics is that they gotta relate to the same base. Otherwise, you're gonna look way out of whack.
Yeah.
If-
Well, this
I just know that from trying to present.
No,
So I think you just gotta grab the best source you can.
Yeah.
My comment was temporal, that nice to compare year to year, or decade to decade, because you did a nice job of describing a couple of different decades, and I wanted to go back up a little bit if I could, in the very opening paragraph. I just think it's important to set, like, you started out with the 1600s, and but I know, but,
yeah,
but I
that was
think it's
cool, yeah, Brewster, I was like, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
I guess my thought is, and I read it as table setting, so the important
Yeah.
document to set the table. What's important to set the table is how Harwich has changed, how we've gone from an agrarian environment to fishing to cranberry. A lot of things have happened since World War II. What, describe the tone. There was a huge influx of people from 60 to 70, like 50% increase. Why? I mean, we're not saying what some of the factors are that caused that, and then it flattened out, and we've changed quite a bit since 2000, and even 220 since the pandemic. I guess my thought is to, and I put a couple of things in yellow, which I guess we can send, it was the only thing I wrote, other than the comments. But I just thought that, like, almost in a bullet form, to say, here's where we've progressed. Here's where we're at a tipping point. Later on, in your conclusion, I thought was great, where you had that 44% of that housing was was part-time.
Yeah, and
but it was very-
I wanted to kind of call it maybe purely seasonal homes or
Well,
something like that.
whatever the label is.
Yeah,
for it.
whatever the correct language is. Christine was gonna say something.
And I just want to finish this.
Oh, yeah, excuse me,
That's
go ahead.
okay, I'm on my little soapbox. But we're kind of hit a tipping point. That's why I think setting the table, having a little conclusion at the end of each of these sections, it should bring us at the end of this document to, now I appreciate why we're gonna steer in this direction, that direction. I didn't think there was enough so what's cleared to set the table. You were putting facts out there, but, ooh, you're so close to getting the table set. That was,
Okay.
Thank you.
now I'll be quiet.
Christine wanted to say something.
For the open space, it is a challenge to really identify the restrictions and the level of detail on the restriction of the land. So we are working on that as part of the open space and rec plan. I've just updated a fair amount of the open space inventory from the last go-around, as well as anything that's been added since 2016. But it's very nuanced, so and it's, you know, it's something that I think as a committee, that will be one of our tasks that I'll ask the committee to start looking at. Just given more local knowledge, because a lot of it is also knowledge that unfortunately I just don't have yet.
Yeah,
But we are.
You're
but
acquiring.
It is part of, it will be part of the open space and rec plan, and I think that might also lend a little bit more clarity to
Yeah.
the land use categories as well.
It's been quite a while since I've looked at the last comprehensive plan. Because I've been working on the open space plan, the curiosity here is that the open space plan, even though it's only focused on, you know, one slice of the bigger picture, has lots more detail in it than
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan does. And so I think we need to find some sort of middle ground in terms of level of detail in the bigger plan. You know, that it, you do, because most of the people who are gonna read this plan are not, you want it to be short enough to be readable, but long enough to actually make it from the 1600s to
Right.
2024.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's, somehow we gotta find some middle ground there.
It is
And,
about,
yeah,
again, knowing your audience.
Yeah.
And the audience is going to be Joe resident, if you will. So they don't need that higher level of detail.
Yeah,
Their interest will always be, how is this affecting me?
We-
And writing to that and illustrating, even with maps as opposed to tables, will help them digest the information a lot better.
let me just ask a question. Sharon, when you guys were working on the Brewster plan, it was a relatively short plan,
Yeah.
but it had a lot of substance in it. You know, it was more about looking forward, you know, in terms of, I mean, obviously you have to have background information to sort of set the scene, but it had a lot of detail about not just what the goals would be, but the policies and the strategies that would, you know, achieve those. So, I mean, how are you envisioning this structurally to, you know, just how long a document, how detailed, you know, I'm just trying to get a handle on this.
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. So, I mean, we have really tried to keep the plans shorter rather than longer because, and to focus on the the key issues, what are current issues, key issues, what, you know, what things have changed since the last plan was updated. So, you know, but the length of these plans can vary, but we're trying to shoot for these initial drafts to be 3 to 4 pages long, which is not easy because some of them don't lend themselves to something that short. Others, well, you might have a hard time filling 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah.
So the length can vary. So that's that's the goal, because by the time you put together, vision statement, the policies, the community input, all these different sections, you still have a 100-page document,
Right.
honestly,
Which
so.
means a lot to us, but
Yeah.
not to the person
And not
consuming it.
Right, and in Brewster's case, to be fair, they had had a prior visioning process that preceded the comprehensive plan update. So they had a year-long process that preceded that, where they had many, many workshops, like half a dozen or more, and stakeholder meetings, and it was all focused on vision and, very, very thorough in that regard. So by the time we got involved in doing the comprehensive plan, they had already done a lot of legwork, really. So they already knew, kind of what they wanted to focus on and key issues. But those existing conditions sections, they went back and forth, and they were vetted like several times
Okay.
to really like hone them down to the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 6 minutes left in this section. Jim, I'll let you go, and then I have 2 points, but go ahead.
Okay, just under this existing land use, I'm not sure what these definitions are, but when it says that potential developable residential lands comprise just 560 acres, or about 5% of the land, does that include like all the open land in Brian's neighborhood in East Harwich and stuff?
Well, that's based on assessor's data, so,
There's not
this is
much.
under, and so just to clarify, this is also based on, based on assessor's data and, the land use codes that are used, so,
Like, would they, I own about 4 acres of land around me, and that I bought
Mhm.
because I don't wanna see it developed. But I wonder if they count any of that, it's sort of not, it's not been parceled out as to what it could be. But I'm just surprised it's such a low number. for me.
again, it's based on the data source. I mean, like, we could also,
Maybe
I'm
say
not sure that
something to that
Mass GIS
extent. We could say, this is this is difficult to calculate for
It is.
said reasons.
It is, yeah. I mean, we could look at Mass GIS and the way they categorize land use. I'm not sure that's gonna give you a better, better,
And
or
then
more
one
accurate,
last thing, and so
yeah.
the-
because
the
that's
line
also
above that-
8 years old.
And the line above that where it says 23% is miscellaneous, is
Yeah.
that?
You had stepped out. Well, you had stepped out. We've drilled down on
Yes.
that. All right, trucking along.
Okay, so,
2 things, just to follow your lead about that this is really kind of a state of existing conditions and not, goals and strategy. It read to me a bit, and again, understand this is just the first draft, the idea about like cluster development and stuff read as strategy, probably doesn't belong in this section. Or what the author was intending maybe about past, and to that, in our remaining 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 20 seconds, what Brian was saying about we're table setting here, I thought it was worth talking about maybe more in the table setting context of the 1 acre zoning and the water, and whether that was the strategy. Someone started to say that, and then maybe where we are now with that strategy, either both ecologically how effective that was, or not how effective, or how that's hard to measure, or, so that's probably
Or unintended consequences.
Yes,
What have we learned
yes,
from it?
yes, that's kind of a state of the Harwich situation.
That's kind of what I meant about the so whats.
100%, but that I think would be high yield.
Sure. Okay.
Any other big things about land use before?
Well, my other big thing, just to,
Yeah.
I said a little bit before, but it's right in that same paragraph. 44% of the town's housing stock is comprised of seasonal or occasional residents. Does that change our definition of the town? I mean, at what point is this a tourist, more of a tourist destination than it is a residential enclave? I wonder if we're watching kind of this trend grow. We're getting closer and closer to a tipping point. Do we declare the tipping point?
Well, but another issue is we've become very dependent on this summer, folks,
Yes.
for all the jobs. Like at one point, they said,
We've
oh,
been a tourist destination for over 100 years.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say,
But
that
we're-
it's
but-
nothing new, it's just,
but is
it's
it
coming in a
primarily?
different form.
It's growing.
It's growing, but it
Or I
always
think
has
it's
been.
real estate,
growing even more
real
so
estate
than
is a
real estate.
proxy for it. I think people, folks always came,
I
but, you
think
know.
it would be helpful to have a discussion about how hard it is to define this.
right.
Because this is, and it's not just, we're not the only town that's dealing with this. It's a Cape-wide issue, in fact, it's a nationwide issue, but particularly for here, so some discussion in the plan about, you know, in earlier days, the seasonal population would come and, you know, use motels and hotels and some summer rentals. But there are more and more summer rentals, and particularly with the advent of
No
Vrbo
hotels.
and Airbnb, that short-term summer rentals have become much more common. I think that it's just, I think there is some discussion of it in the housing section.
I was gonna say there
Yeah,
is.
But it's a
yes.
land use thing,
Right,
too.
right.
And so it would be good to have,
Okay.
it would be good to have some discussion on that.
But the other thing we have is you see, like, houses that people use for 3 weeks a year and they're not rented, they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And that gets to the point of, are we wasting land, or is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
There's not a shortage of bedrooms or bathrooms on Cape Cod. If you think about it that way, maybe put that in the comprehensive plan.
It really comes down to your point, is like the access to the bedrooms and bathrooms, and are we classifying,
Correct.
are we classifying things correctly, right? Like,
Right.
is the town of Harwich gonna be okay with us opening up 7 Motel 8s across what used to be residential land? I don't think that's the case, but part of it is that the answer too? Do you know what I'm saying? Is like,
Yeah, well,
if
I mean,
we've got.
the market isn't interested in that anymore. I mean, the old model of, you know, kind of cheap motels.
Hotel, motel, that's
No,
gone.
no,
Yeah.
Except for the
Yeah.
big bucks of Quasit or Chatham Bars Inn or something. I mean, look, we had Stone Horse, we had Handkerchief Shoals right there, and, you know, Handkerchief Shoals is barely hanging on. Stone Horse is now for,
A dormitory,
for seasonal
Mhm.
employees and
Workforce,
type
yep.
of thing. I mean, it's totally changing the face of where we are.
The people who visit here want to experience the lifestyle of living in a house on Cape Cod,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like,
Ah.
if that
I think you're right.
really is, it's really what they're going for. Otherwise, they'd be staying in motels and hotels.
That's been going on since the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this.
I think just the amount and the demand has gone
That's a
up
funny
with the
statement.
secret getting out more and more, right?
All right.
That's a funny
Christine had
statement,
something to
because
say.
if you look at, like in Yarmouth, a house in Cape Cod in Yarmouth is a two-bedroom, one-bedroom, one
Cottage.
bath, two-bedroom ranch. It's in pretty crappy shape. No, they basically want to be treated better than they are treated at home.
And they're gonna shell out the
You know,
bucks to do it.
yeah.
With
Ask
that,
a clarifying
let's,
question before
yes,
we leave.
yes,
Does
before we leave land use in a timely way, yes.
Say that like mansionization or, you know, large home
That
development.
is supported by the data that
Yeah.
we've collected. Mansionization is an acceptable word, given what people said to us in our surveys. Yeah,
Christine had something.
go ahead.
The other, for the zoning, I would also note that the town did adopt multifamily and two-family zoning, so I do think that's a positive, for the town in terms of density.
Well, and the ADU stuff too, all of
That
that.
was true, yeah.
Cool. We're gonna be back here again. We'll be around this path again, so will we accomplish some meaningful things? You good? Everyone take a stretch for a second. Let's go on to.
Keep us on task,
Yes,
boys.
we are, well, we're trying, just to not die in the first inning here. Go to, natural resources is the next one. Margot and Barbara were our SMEs, you know, about this. I wanted, going into this, I think it's great to go back to the data, you know, similar to Brewster, maybe we didn't have 6 in-person sessions, but we've been talking to folks for a long time. You know, we had 2 very pretty interactive sessions, and then we've had a lot of virtual engagement, and we have a lot of hard data. So drilling down on that, remember, folks really told us they live here in Harwich, and what they value about Harwich is the people. and the, community, whatever that means to them, but the people, and the natural environment. So that made sense to kind of go into natural resources with that data top of mind. A small thing for both Margot, Barbara, and anyone else who read it, I wanted to just fact check about our cranberry history. That felt a little cranberry forward to me, which I would want to make sure that that is accurate. Not that there isn't a cranberry history here. It felt cranberry aggressive. So I don't know if anyone.
Where was that?
We can
Hold on.
double check that.
I don't remember that, but it's.
Okay.
yeah.
No, it's sort of read that there were two main industries. One was cranberry, correct?
Yeah.
Historically, cranberry growing and shipbuilding, but that was a long time ago. And
Yeah.
the cranberry thing has continued
Yeah.
up until comparatively recently, when, the big sort of Canadian and Wisconsin
Push this out.
farms
It
have
may be
kinda-
totally accurate just because it is such a big thing about land use and it's equivocal. Remember when Mike came and talked to us from the Conservation Society? It is bucolic. Its environmental impact is open to interpretation. Not that we need to wade into that, just making sure that we are accurate in what we are saying it is in both the history of the town and currently. That seemed important to me. I thought we would spend most of our time on goals and strategies, because this is a goals and strategies thing.
So this, so this section begins to propose or offer at the end. That's not, meaning that's where they'll live
Yeah.
ultimately, but after the description of existing conditions. And this section is longer because we combined very many topics into a full natural resources section. And at the end, there are separate goals that are proposed for discussion, covering the different topics that are required under the regional plan. So this is where you begin to have discussion about, consistency with the regional plan, so that.
And I believe you have some of so you have the file that has Margot's, there's some factual comments in there about
Yes.
and we don't need to delve into that. That's
Yeah, we'll
not
correct
best use of
that.
our time here. So if everyone can truck down to the end of it a little bit.
Or
And
any other sort of like big picture things, and
That's
acknowledging
good.
too that the open space, because we're kind of chicken and egg here with the open space update, that there's a lot of data in that section that has to be updated still, so.
I would say if we go down to page 6 of 8, so key issues moving forward.
Yeah.
And it was, so, page 6, 7, and 8.
What is the name on?
Is Harwich Natural Resources, 5/1/24. And at the bottom, page 6, 7, and 8, that's what we want to talk about.
And this hasn't been, these topics haven't been fleshed out and further, so it could become a narrative if these are, this is sort of just, again, a starting point for what some of the key issues are.
So it start with water.
So, yeah, no, you got,
If you want to.
I'm so
Okay,
used to using
I
a
know,
trackpad.
You get it all.
Yeah.
63 ponds.
Fishing, fouling, and navigation.
That comes from the
So Barbara,
ordinance.
yes, Barbara, you had pointed out, and I think it's a small one, but I think it's actually worth bringing here. Expanding public access to the shoreline where appropriate through acquisitions or donations. That probably maybe needs to be a little bit more nuanced. Because when I read about the land, the number of public beaches in Harwich, that's an interesting, it was like a lot. Those are not all accessible public beaches, say in terms of parking and things like that. I mean, really, you have Red River.
Red River Beach has been full the last 2 or 3 days.
Yes,
Park
so.
what you can't park at, you have
Yes.
to walk to.
Yeah, I mean, well, the great majority of what is classified as public beach in Harwich you know, you have to have the chutzpah to access, but you're certainly not parking your car there. Or at Pleasant Street Beach there is, but, you know, it's Pleasant and
limited.
Pleasant and Riverside, and Red River. So maybe that, there's probably a more nuanced way to say that. Barbara had pointed out that maybe this isn't really this isn't a priority, but actually in the context of, we were talking about like mansionization and things like that, and why people live here for community and natural resources, that is, there's maybe a better way to put that.
I think,
Making me
I
think
think
I
it's-
should have a parking lot on my empty.
I think you should. What are you doing with those 4 acres?
Yeah, and it has 100 trees on it.
Go ahead, Mark, oh my God.
Miscellaneous.
23% Harwich, yes.
A parking lot.
Go ahead, Mark.
no, I was gonna say, there's also another facet of this, which is, in a lot of places, and this isn't unique to Harwich, what was formerly considered, not formally, but formerly considered public access points have been blocked off by private property owners. And in some cases, it's justified, and they have the right to do that. In other places, it's very murky about whether they're allowed to do that or not. And so I think the goal of having a, you know, a goal to address this issue is not just, you know, providing public access, but also maintaining as much of the accessibility of the shoreline
Yeah.
as possible.
Well said, well said. I don't want to dwell on it, but in the concept of what we're talking about, I think that's like very well said. In the recommendations, because we have so much expertise in this room, what stood out to me, of course, we want to prevent loss of degradation of wetlands, vernal pools, and cedar swamps. But a lot of our zoning is not necessarily there. And I mean, an example of a specific that seemed to work is increase in percentage of land required to be preserved for open space and clustered subdivisions. Cool. I wondered if there's an appetite for saying something about zoning in here, but also, this is top of page 8. I wanted to get, this seemed like a very specific thing that I am not knowledgeable about. Develop a natural resource management plan for the Six Pond Special District.
That was actually an addition that I suggested.
Oh, okay.
And it's the largest natural resource
Chunk of
area
land we have.
in Harwich, besides Bell's Neck. And there actually is a plan for Bell's Neck, which is just being updated now.
Right.
And what does that mean for us lay folk? I mean, it seems like, yeah, you shouldn't do bad things in Bell's Neck, but what is a natural resource
Managing the
management
actual
plan
property.
actually is?
It talks about what the resources are there that are threatened, and some management techniques to protect them. So it could be, you know, buffer zones around ponds. It could be trying to fix stormwater runoff. It could be, you know, having regulations about shoreline cutting. It could be a whole bunch of different
I guess
things.
we should maybe be specific about that, because I guess we're saying the same thing, because I'm kind of coming at it from, yes, all these, yes, we should protect our water, but you can, if you got an acre and it's zoned right, you can look at it, you know?
Yeah, well, and I mean, there is a group of people in town, through the Harwich Conservation Trust
Right.
who are working on this. It's not a funded thing, and the trust has put some money into it, but it's only in the infancy right now. But I think,
Which one are you talking about? You're talking about the.
I'm talking
the
about
six-
Six Ponds. I'm talking about
I guess
Six
to
Ponds.
Mary's point, to the layperson to read it, you
So
know,
what?
I didn't quite understand. I knew the tool was
Yeah.
important because I've learned enough from you, but I didn't understand exactly what the tool was. So we should probably say what the tool is.
And I think that, you know, we've made similar suggestions for the open space plan, that there should be more focus on the Six Ponds area. That there's been some discussion of, you know, because there's a concern about affordable housing in town, that the zoning in the Six Ponds area, which is more restrictive than it is in other parts of town, that should be loosened up. And I think that there are compelling reasons to not loosen it up, and in fact, you might want to tighten it up in certain ways. So it needs to be in there so that people are knowing that we have a resource there, that it's not just a matter of putting sewers in, which, by the way, there isn't a plan to put sewers in there, and then just allowing development to proceed as if there weren't other resources that are affected by development activity.
And I was curious about if open space belonged in there. If you go down to the bottom of 8, open space goal, open space policies, I was like, oh, but we have all other plan, I know there's overlap, but just in the evolution of that, whether
Yeah.
that
If you
belonged.
follow the systems approach in
Yeah.
the regional plan,
Yeah.
open space does fall under natural resources. So there's actually, that's why there are so many topics there,
Yes.
because it covers every goal and every sort of topic area, well, brief, but.
Internal medicine intensivist note in the ICU, yes. Yeah, I get it, yeah. Go ahead.
We feel strongly about the Six Ponds Special District treatment, which we do. Is that technique applicable anywhere else in town? Might it be our recommendation that we
It could
use
be.
this?
It could be, but I think that, as I said, there already is one for Bell's Neck, which is the other biggest area.
We should put in there what it is, so people know that, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Because I kind of know, like, don't dump your oil on Bell's Neck, yeah, but like, to Mary's point.
There's a lot more subtlety to
I
it.
know,
than
I
that.
know, there's a lot more tools.
After your fryer letter.
Yeah, well, it used to be the dump. If you want to talk about Harwich history, the dump was in Bell's Neck, so, yes, yes,
Also,
so.
isn't there also a DCPC for
Yes.
West Harwich?
There is.
Yes.
And
that's for a different
in the
purpose, right?
discussion, I forget which section it was in. It might have been in last, the two things got mixed up. in
Yeah.
the-
Yeah,
in
it
the-
was
in the
definitely
discussion
last
of
year's
the
too.
draft.
Yeah,
And there are two DCPCs.
Right.
And with entirely different
goals and
Goals,
purposes,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that will be brought up when we get to community design, we'll be talking about that tool used there for that purpose, so
Yeah.
it'll come up more than once, but we can strengthen that.
I think it's just helpful to like,
Yeah, what is it?
all this that we've been talking about, like eventually bringing this to a town meeting and getting community input, and like, no one wants to have dirty water in Harwich, but like, you have to kind of understand what the tools are to use that, and so getting out of some of the, professional speak, I think probably helps.
Well, the other thing is, if we're talking about how much this town has changed since the last comprehensive plan, and the increase of people coming in, and people leaving, et cetera, there are a whole lot of people out there that we're gonna hopefully reach through our public education, as well as the document itself, that have not been through this before, and may not know about Six Ponds, and don't know about Bell's Neck and what we've been doing, and, I mean, they need to know the history as to why we're going forward, so that they can get on board with it, versus just hitting them out of the blue with saying, well, we need to do this, and it's like,
Yeah, which
why?
seems like kind of like, big government bureaucracy, you're right,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure where we'll raise the issue of how fast we're getting, sort of new approaches to move things that we don't need septic systems. I mean, it sounds like that's a 20-year,
more than that.
a 20 or 30-year project that ought to be a 5 to 10-year project. Sort of, I mean, we have to consider that stuff too, it seems. And it's a lot of money, but it's a huge loss if we wait too long.
How much in here, like the Herring River, for example, has been out of, and you touched on that a little bit, has been out of bounds, so to speak, on nitrogen load for a long time, and there's quote, I'm going to misspeak, but like the state would like you to take some mitigation about that, and yet homes are built on
Right.
on Herring River.
Yep.
With septic systems. Should we be more specific about that of in here? I mean, if we're talking about goals, about, a little more articulate about nitrogen reduction measures. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's oysters, but,
As
Um,
I read all these goals here, which are lofty, there's so many goals, and I'm thinking, well, that's nice, of
Yeah.
course we want to do
yeah,
all
we
that,
want
of course
clean
we
water.
do.
Yeah.
But I don't
yeah.
know which one's attainable and which not, and can we give that kind of clue that here's a path to that direction?
Yeah, yeah,
And with
yeah.
respect that this is a first draft. I
Yeah, of
understand that.
course. But no, exactly,
But
yeah.
which
what it would
ones
take,
can
yeah.
be attainable? And because, yeah, we all want a better place.
Yeah, right.
But tell me which ones we can move forward with. Tell me which ones have a chance.
Struck out to me as potentially, if we're talking about water, obviously the sewering is a thing, but the nitrogen is an opportunity.
There are also other technologies, like
Right.
the AI systems,
Right.
the advanced D-Night, and
Right.
then, permeable reactive barriers.
Right,
And other, like implementing some landscaping for like berms and
Right.
swales.
Right.
Not just putting drainage and directing stormwater runoff.
right. So maybe we should say that, like, the goal, like, we should articulate that a little more, like, this, I mean, these are monitored and every effort should be made, and maybe listing some of those.
Could you
It could-
clarify which goal, like, goal or section policies are you talking about the water
Part of
resources?
it's phase two.
Well, it got a little dodgy there, because water resources goal, are we thinking about drinking water? And then ocean, ocean resources policy, which is also, so like water is, I guess water, we probably have been thinking about drinking water, right? And then it was cool to talk about the lens, the Monomoy lens, and the federal designation and stuff that was in there. That was good, up above in the background. But if you're talking ocean and wetland and wildlife, there's a lot of overlap there, and probably the hardest data we have is that all south-facing beaches in Harwich routinely, or watersheds is the wrong term, beaches, rivers, water flowing in routinely are outside of the state's nitrogen recommended limits all the time.
The confusing,
All the time. That's commission data. I mean, we've, and somehow this whole 18-month process, we've reviewed that at one
what I
point.
find confusing is, on page 7, it has draft goals, but the page before it, on page 6, it has these sort of 3 bullet points. Nitrogen, watershed pollution, drinking. Are those goals, or those?
Yeah.
issues? I mean, it doesn't really,
Other issues.
They're just a beginning.
Key
discussion
issues
of
for the town.
Yeah.
key Issues,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Set up.
Each section is sort of set up that way
Yeah.
to go through the background and then identify what are some of the key issues, and then you go into. the
Satisfy
goals
'em
and
with the
policies.
goals.
Yeah. So you probably want, that's somewhere in our drive and easily findable about all that south-facing nitrogen stuff.
But you know what? There's something missing, which is ponds, freshwater ponds. Because we have a
All
water
this-
supply goal, we have an ocean
Ocean,
resource,
wetland.
and we have wetlands.
Yep.
And wildlife and open space, but there's no ponds. So,
which are the 6
Wonder
ponds.
if they
We still
don't
have
a
ponds.
ponds
Yeah.
goal in the regional plan.
Kettle ponds are beloved.
Can't go in them.
I'll go back and check
Yeah,
that.
you definitely can't get to them.
Beloved.
It's hard to find parts.
Yeah, right.
Tried to get to Long Pond in a
Walking
while.
3 miles to get to the
Probably be
pond.
adding
I'm sure
You
they'll
can-
be adding.
yeah,
some.
We have 1 minute left in this section.
This is a good one.
But
It's a
a
good
big-
one.
It's a big thing.
No, yeah, ponds are
Big thing,
beloved.
I know,
Yeah.
it's in the news.
I feel strongly about their
pretty
ponds.
much, Yes.
So,
Okay, so, yeah, let me go back and
That's a great one.
check how that is, covered.
Categorized, yeah, in your internal medicine ICU note, yes.
And how they broke that out in the
Yeah.
regional plan.
Any other in our remaining, that was a great one, Margot, great catch. Any other big, we'll be back around this way. Okay. Does anyone need a break for a second? Does anyone need a restroom break or anything? We're doing good work. All right. Good, all right. So we have housing to dig into. I jokingly said that we would stand on David's shoulders because he gave us this very nice, thorough document that was very articulate. I think I shared with you, Sharon, but had a really nice like summary of a lot of things. And then you wanted us to get through, what was the last one you wanted us to get through?
Well, housing was your other priority.
Housing, but then you had an aspirational goal, and it's only 15 after 6, so maybe we could bang out the aspirational goal.
Aspirational would be to get into the climate resilience and mitigation, energy mitigation. Those were submitted to you later. You know,
Yeah.
a little
What,
later, so if you
would
get to
anybody,
those-
would anyone like to, I'm putting in a proposal on the committee's sentiment. Would you like to dig into housing now, and if we finish it, fine, and we could get on, we, just an open, and we'll do climate mitigation, or would you like to try to bang out climate mitigation and come back to housing?
Let's go to housing first. I think housing.
Is that a cool sentiment?
Let's do housing.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
feeling
so
strong, and
we'd like to hear about
I'll
that,
let the
yeah.
discussion run, because obviously this is clearly a super important thing, and if we get to
Here till
climate,
midnight, what the heck?
no, we'll end, but if
Can
we
we
get
get some
to.
drinks, guys?
We'll fix it.
But just a
Please.
couple things.
Yes.
because
To give it to everybody who's listening.
Part of the information on this is the housing production plan,
Yes.
and just a couple things. I just went through this afternoon.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
On page 53, they talk about potential opportunities, and on the list of potential opportunities, the two probably largest potential opportunities aren't on the list, which are the development of the Marceline property and the Pine Oaks thing in North Harwich.
There's a paragraph
But we
that
got it.
describes the trust working on Pine Oaks.
Yeah.
But it's a very confusing paragraph,
Yeah.
and it conflates those two projects.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
Pine Oaks
The
3.
Marceline property.
The Marceline property.
Queen Anne.
Marceline?
Which is, we
Marceline.
don't know what the name of the development's gonna be yet.
Yeah.
But the Marceline property, which is on the corner of Queen Anne Road and 124,
Okay.
on the northeast corner of that intersection. The trust is actively working on a development proposal for that.
Okay.
The Pine Oaks thing is a private organization.
Okay.
It's not the trust that's working on that. And
Okay.
it's in a different location, also off of Queen Anne, a different part of Queen
It's
Anne
the
Road.
organization that developed the
The
Pine
Cape
Oaks,
Church home.
Right.
Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3.
Right, so I think with Christine's help and maybe Brianna's help, they could probably give you some language that
Okay.
would describe the two projects, because they're both very important,
Okay.
but they're not the same.
Yeah, and I think that is like a great segue to, what we could, to go to David's document, which if you want to call, it's called Housing Documents, May 2024 DSPITS. Clearly, those two projects have to be included in, if we're talking about housing comments and if we're focusing on goals, knowing that the housing production plan, like all that is coming along. I think it's appropriate to include support or reference of those two projects in this document. That makes sense.
So,
Yeah,
and
digging, go ahead,
The
Ed.
other two issues, one is on page 71 of the production plan. They talk about availability of subsidy funds, and they list a number of different sources. CPA, money gotten from sale of properties, income from the cell tower lease. One of the things that they don't include on it, or I can't quite figure out if they do or don't, is the quarter of the room occupancy tax that's dedicated. And that's probably the largest ongoing source. That's pretty well unrestricted in what it can be used on. That should be mentioned. And then it was page 79.
So, can I clarify, do you want these included in the housing overview section for the LCP, you mean, or?
Yeah, I mean, they actually should be somewhere, should be mentioned in the housing production plan to sort of overlook that is, I mean, this is some, I think, substantial information that,
Okay.
but, this, and then there's, in terms of, I can't remember why I wrote down page 79.
While you're thinking about it,
Yeah.
just in David's document, I would suggest there might be some things that could be a little bit cut and paste for you, Sharon. For example, I mean, or at least the idea or whatever, I think this is appropriate to put in this kind of document. Housing proponents and regulators must always listen fully to neighbor concerns on traffic, water quality, habitat. So, you know what I mean? If we're talking about values, like he kind of put some of that down, that might be a easy thing for you guys to put in. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, and it's, in the whole housing production plan, it's sort of, it starts by saying that the sort of first housing production plan was done in 2003, and approved by town meeting, which is true, but it really wasn't what you'd consider a housing production. I wrote it, and I just pulled it out of my hat one evening, and because we had been asked to submit something as a plan to support some of the other articles. And to have that as sort of the foundation of developing the strategy now, 20 years later, is sort of, I think, I mean, a lot's have happened, and there should be more rethinking.
But there has been,
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
there is a previous housing production
Yeah,
plan
yeah,
that
you know.
meets the
I think
state
they've come a long
requirements.
way since then.
Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
The other suggestion of potentially, again, kind of, making this doable work is digging into our survey data and some of the comments about, housing and demographic statistics do not fully reflect the extent of people who are unable to move here for medical, educational, and property construction maintenance jobs due to lack of housing. So, I think there's a role for, there were a lot of articulate folks that in our open comment sections, both on the postcards and the survey data. And if you wanted to, I thought that was a really nice point to make this come alive a little bit, to have some comments from the community in that. Did anyone feel, 'cause I actually read it more than a week ago, it's not top of mind to me, but did everyone feel like the big A affordable housing versus attainable housing was well explained in this, or do we need to do more about that?
I think David, had some suggestions on that. I thought his comments were good.
They're very good. That's why I didn't want to reinvent the wheel on this, and this is not just David speaking, this is a good summary of where we've been the last 18 months and what the community is saying, and it was articulate.
One thing in here, Sharon, that I thought was an important point that sometimes gets lost and is sort of at the very end. He says that all of the villages in Harwich are not equal. And given the, availability of land and so forth, that we don't want to be treating them all as if, they're all growth centers where we're gonna have this level of density. They're different. There are nuances there. And so we just need to factor that in.
The other thing that I thought we should probably, again, he was very inspired writing this. He helped us. From what we've heard, while also supporting, those two kind of major projects conceptually in town, we heard over and over again from folks in our data is, he says, we would encourage use of existing rather than new development. And people are not wrong about that when you see these deeply underutilized, almost approaching eyesore properties, in town, you know, and how can we use this better? I think that's appropriate in the plan and reflective of what we've heard.
One of David's comments that I guess I'm gonna have to ask him.
You can take issue with it.
Well, no, it's attainable housing. The strategies providing attainable housing differ from those for big A housing. There's more opportunity for home ownership. And I'm not exactly sure that
It's true.
it's true or is, I don't know.
I think maybe the tools are different, right? And I think he starts to elaborate on that. Strategies could be detailed as to how zoning could be public standards controls.
The subsidy is not available for homeownership.
You know, and I guess, when you get, and is there some significance to the blue that I missed?
If,
The text that's in blue rather than black?
blue.
It may be somebody's edits.
It's
might be,
probably somebody's edits,
edits, yeah.
because,
Yeah.
Okay.
right, we would have given you something that's just black and white right now, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the things that, from 2003, that is still important, I think, is, you know, the basic problem with housing is financing it. And
Right.
in 2003, one of the three items that I wrote about is developing financial capacity in the town to support and develop housing. And, you know, there's some things that have fallen to us over the years. But the town is really, you know, not made, drawn a line in the sand and made a commitment to developing financial capacity.
Which our realtor friends will tell you about, like when you really ask them, like, you know, a federally backed mortgage, you know, and what we might consider or hope to be attainable housing in Harwich, say a 3-bedroom house, 2-bathroom, but with a 30-year-old roof and a 30-year-old furnace and stuff, then it's almost impossible to get a federally backed, like a Fannie, Freddie Mac, you know, mortgage based on that. So, which is kind of a different, the realtors have just taught me that a little bit. So, I think that's
You know,
saying what Ed is saying from a different perspective. And so maybe these, you know, we still always want to be as specific as possible because it's such an important issue in this section about the goals, you know.
You know, I think, you know, the sort of commitment, financial commitment I'm thinking of is similar to this financial commitment we've made to clean up wastewater. I mean, you know, we're now into some $70 million of approved bond issues
Sure.
for wastewater, and we've never, I mean, all the funds that we get is
Yeah, federal. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
funds that have fallen to us, either
Yeah.
general tax or CPA,
CPA.
you know.
I mean, CPA has put
or-
substantial.
Or the cell tower revenue.
So, just to add to that, I mean, in some ways, and, you know, I travel around the country a fair amount, and I always like to go look at housing. And most of the places that are doing affordable housing are doing it in very concentrated ways that look really cool.
Yeah.
They are a lot more inexpensive, but they all have other approaches to getting water and getting rid of your toiletry than we have. You know, so it's almost like until we figure out the water issue and the septic issue, there's no affordable housing. And it takes three. It takes those two things and saying this property, you know, we're going to put houses 6 feet apart from each other, you know, and have 20 of them or 30 of them. And I've seen 5 locations of these that look gorgeous, really cool houses. Go to North Carolina and look around the Chapel Hill area. It's amazing what they do.
Well, you know.
Or Colorado.
And what you say, one of the sort of policy goals should be the recommendation that, you know, in sort of moving ahead with solving or addressing our housing needs, is that we need to, not just zoning,
Yeah.
to be bringing, supporting it, but also in our wastewater planning.
Can't do anything without fixing the wastewater problem
Exactly.
as far as
And we have a
But
third-
to-
density or anything else. And even if these little scenarios Jim's talking about are great, but here again, you know, the Marsh Line property or even up in Pine Oaks 3 would be, you could put a little package plant in. But you put a little package plant in, it's gotta feed into something.
That's right.
It's gotta be discharged somewhere. And if we don't have a way to discharge it, what good's putting a little package plant in, which is perfect for that North Harwich location, because if you're not gonna sewer out there for the next 35 years, you could do something with it. But, you know,
Yeah.
it's the chicken and the egg, and unfortunately, this egg has been,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I hope, we hope ultimately the language will be kind of inspired, though. I mean, what we've heard is that the town needs to think broadly, right? And use all tools at our disposal, which include blah, 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 you know, including, you know, re-envisioning of what is ideal, you know, aesthetically and functionally and stuff like that. Should we, literally, I'm asking this question, is there, based on what we've learned and committee deliberation and stuff, something around like regulation is the wrong word, but encouragement, you know, of homes staying in for year-round housing, or remember, you know, early on you said something to me that impressed me about, like, you know, I'm like, well, you
I
know,
blacked out. I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no, no, you know, about like but you regulate Airbnbs, or like you create, you know, and you kind of, you're like, why is regulation ever the answer? And I'm like, you know, that stuck with me or whatever. But like, I mean, what, yeah, what do you?
The Aspen stuff.
Aspen
It's probably.
Indeed program, where the town, Aspen is buying.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, yeah.
That's, you know.
That's right.
I think that's
So,
the other model.
just to, I think I only briefly emailed that Karen Sonnerborg has sent us a
Yes.
draft, you know, an updated
Yes.
draft with strategies that are included, and so this section likely, I mean, will
Look
change anyway.
different, yeah.
But it'll look different
Okay.
After we have a chance to incorporate.
And that would be
those
like
things.
lovely, something we'd like to see in the PDF. And I think maybe then, right, and you know, that's something we're gonna keep coming back to, obviously.
I'm a little confused. The version that you sent out of the housing section
Okay.
has some edits in it. And one of the edits is under priority of affordable housing needs. Somebody wrote a comment, these don't align with the draft housing needs assessment of the housing production plan.
I didn't know where that came from.
So-
That was Karen Sonnerborg, which was like, you've got to be kidding, because we
Yeah.
referenced their draft plan. So it was, again, like a chicken and egg thing, because she hadn't updated the strategies.
Okay, all
We
right.
didn't have them. And then I sent her the draft, and she said they're not consistent, because, you know, I've done this. So it's like, so.
It was
it
Ryan
will-
Christianberry.
She is, yeah, no, she's actually working for Time Bond now.
Oh, she is, okay, all right.
So
Oh,
she's,
okay, so
yeah.
she was tweaking stuff in there. Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have gotten anything with any comments unless there were things for clarification that we,
This is why we
Could
need a
not
single
find out.
document, because we're just gonna
Yeah.
die.
but, yeah, it's
Yeah,
needless
as
to
best
say,
we
this
can.
is
Yeah.
going to be
So Ed, that's where the
updated.
blue came from.
Yeah.
You were asking.
Yes,
Found it.
apologies for that, yeah.
Joyce,
Yes,
could I
please.
please circle around? I didn't
Please.
quite get what your last comment was.
I guess I'm, you know, we've, so the strategies are coming from Karen, right? You know, who's really the expert about this. We have a little bit of time. We've thought a lot about housing. We've heard a lot about housing. I guess I'm opening it up to the committee a little bit of what is our consensus or discussion or direction around, this is a little bluntly said, support of regulation that would potentially increase existing housing being sort of encouraged to be used for year-round.
We actually do have a component of that with the
Tell us.
statistics. Because it's in the all under defined perceptions. If you look at the demographics of the survey respondents, who is actually responding, how many people are responding, and what they're actually responding to, the bottom line is that they have a growing apprehension for the short-term rentals, et cetera, but everything as far as the respondents, they support a year-round working community rather than a resort or retirement community lifestyle, which is what even what Brian was alluding to
Yeah, yeah.
earlier, is identifying that. This is what I see, what the survey is saying.
Right.
And in my view, the plan is to support that, because that's what the people are saying, this is what we're moving towards. And also, we all know that every section is intertwined. We
Yeah,
do
yeah.
know that.
I get it.
But you can't build a house unless you have the land,
Yeah.
unless you have the water. So we can outline that, starting with, this is what you asked for, but to get to here, we need to first accomplish these goals for the land. Then we accomplish these goals here. Then we accomplish these goals here. So giving them a pathway that this can be attainable in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, because that even circles back around to, I know during the workshops, there were a few comments of the public not wanting this plan to be shelved, to
Right.
be utilized.
Right.
So if it's spelled out in an attainable approach, even if it's just general or umbrella, but it gives them a direction,
Yeah.
if you will.
I think to your point, like, almost like if you look at these sections, simplifying it, like, whatever we flesh out is great, but having some version of an executive summary in the front where it talks about, here's, in this area, this is what you guys asked for. Here are all the pain points or the issues that we've identified that are prohibiting that or slowing it or doing whatever. And here are just some things that we're suggesting generally, right? So somebody can look at that in a hot second and say, oh, I kind of understand that. And then if they want to dive in, they can start to dive in and go further and explore it, to your point.
That's typically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
included.
To build on that, Christine, the specific issue around housing and, say, short-term rentals, what tools are kind of available if you're picking multiple choice around that? Not saying any of them are right or wrong, or that we're
following.
supporting that or whatever. Say town of Harwich decides we want to limit short-term rentals, and we think that's going to help there be more housing available year-round in Harwich. What tools are available to a town to do that, if any? I'm not saying they're good or bad, I'm just trying to find out what they are.
In my experience, it's very limited to regulate, but I think, towns can, set up the short-term rental, they can have inspections done, whether, to minimize fire hazards, overcrowding. They can have the Board of Health inspect septic systems. There are ways to flesh out some, or to regulate them a little bit more. In terms of prohibiting, I'm not.
Yeah.
What about like incentivizing? What about incentivizing people to get on board with it? Like, are there
Get on
programs?
board with-
There
Using
are-
their properties, maybe using the properties for long-term rentals versus short-term rentals.
In my
right.
experience, when there was the Great Recession, a lot of property owners opted to rent their properties year-round.
It's economic
and-
forces, yeah.
And there were subsidies, whether it was CPA funding or other donation, fundraising that offset some of the rental costs to the landlord. They were still getting the fair market
Market
rate,
value,
but the
yeah.
tenant was getting a discounted rate, and it was that third funding source that was subsidizing the tenant and the landlord, and it was a win-win all around.
Where was this? On the Vineyard?
Yes, on the Vineyard. And recently, the Vineyard has also opted to limit or try to regulate multi-investment companies
Saw
coming
that.
in to,
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
to gobble up any properties that come on the market. And I think the challenge with that is who's regulating it. And
Right.
once you have the zoning bylaw passed, how is that being enforced? How is it being monitored? Because there's a lot of information that we just simply don't have that's accessible
Yeah.
to
In a
to
free
town
market
halls.
society, yeah.
As part of the short-term rental enactment that they did at the state, there's a whole section of it that, I don't know if any towns on the Cape have enacted, but it deals with if you, I think it's based on the number and whether it's, the operation of the short-term rentals are under the auspices of a management company. There's a substantial bump on the local tax that you can collect from them. I think it's an additional 5%.
This is in the governor's bill? Or
No, no, this
in
is on what
place?
was in place.
Okay.
It's already in place.
And it was put into, it was basically pushed into it by Michaelwitz, the representative who led the committee that developed it, and he's a Boston rep. And because they were having, basically corporate ownership,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna build a hotel, it's just gonna be units in 15 different properties scattered around, So there's that, and I know in Harwich, we've had several times attempted to set up a registration inspection program, and it's always been pushed back by the Board of Health because they say, well, we don't have the people to
Right.
do the inspections. Well, if you're collecting, if you set up the program and, it's a $250 a year registration fee, it doesn't take a whole lot of inspections, a whole lot of registrations before you have enough money to hire several inspectors. But they've never, that's been always a problem. And it was all before, that was all before the state set up their, the short-term rental fee. And I know a number of short-term rental operators back then, it was entirely a cash
Yeah,
business,
right.
and they didn't want to have it surface anywhere, so.
No, I mean, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really helpful information, Christine, because I think as we double back with Karen's, I mean, for something that we want to be so specific about, we also have to be sort of lofty about too, is we need all our tools and,
I think,
So
yeah,
in-
understanding the art of what we can do, right? Like, what are all the things that we have options to? And to Mary's point, what's easy to implement and maybe is the most effective bang for our buck and gets us there as quick as we can. So we can start to stack rank those options with discussions internally and things like that.
Can I just add to that? I think, we should be able to get an answer to, could you stop letting people build mansions? Could we stop people from using the other things? And then the third thing is that.
I have an answer for that.
Wait, 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 so-
No.
Well,
it's complicated.
Regulated, though, and you can charge a certain impact fee if you go over a certain size, and you can earmark those.
Funds for-
I don't know if they're a fee or a tax, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
earmark
And
those,
in some
that
ways,
revenue.
people who
So
we
maybe-
talk to are asking for something that's impossible.
So maybe we
Some
should put that
change to
in.
them.
Christine just gave us a great tool. That is a great tool. That I don't want to be inflammatory. Most people that we care about their opinion would support. I don't mean it that way, but that's a fairly non-controversial tool. I think. Well, everyone's gonna have controversial, but no. But there's a
It's a sensitive issue, it's a tough issue.
Yeah.
Because in Massachusetts, it is controversial. People in terms of property rights.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a medium that any community can find. Or I think there's a compromise.
Yes,
or a
that's what I'm saying.
compromise.
Yes, that is thank you for putting it in a much more nuanced way than I was putting it. So
I'm sorry,
that
Karen.
No, I
That's
actually want
awesome.
to talk to you about that
That-
more
that's
because
awesome
it's
to
I'm
include.
really curious
I
about
didn't get,
how
I
that
didn't
works.
get to make that what it
Oh,
said,
please,
because-
If
and
it's
then
on
Ed.
tax.
Go ahead, Jim, and
So,
then
so
Ed.
the other thing is, it would be nice to have a study or something saying, what if we became a town that was less summary and less all the other stuff? Would this create a mess for people who live here year-round? The restaurant industry, if you stop expanding the number of big houses, you have people with lots of money, it's gonna affect every industry in town.
Landscapers.
All the restaurants, all the Ace Hardware, and so So it'd be interesting to say, would this be a bad thing or a good thing?
Well, I think
You're
we're-
not-
Year-round people.
I mean, you can't stop it, okay?
Yeah, right.
Which, I think what Christine is saying is,
Guardrails.
yeah, you can set up some rules
bumpers. Yeah.
to get some revenue back and create a disincentive to build, monster houses. But you can't stop it,
Nope.
because there's no,
It's America.
yeah.
Go ahead, Ed. And then
As to regulating, limiting the number of short-term rental units, I know in Palm Springs became an incredible problem there, and they initiated that. What they did is they sectioned off the town into, I think there's 12 neighborhoods, and each neighborhood got to have so many short-term rental permits. And it was all based on the fact that everybody who ran one had to get a permit from the town initially, and it was just open season. Well, now that.
they were incentivized to get their permit.
Yeah,
Because, hey,
well,
we're gonna, yeah.
There was no disincentive to. Anyway, now that they've put in these limits, if you have a permit, you can keep on operating. If you had gotten one, you can continue it. But you can't transfer it to a new owner.
So you can't sell the permit,
So
like
you
a
can't-
medallion or
yeah,
anything.
It's not a medallion, and, which means that there are houses out there that people own that they've been trying to sell, but the problem is, because the permit doesn't go with it, the value of the houses drop below what they hold a mortgage on. And in some cases, it's fairly substantial. The house
That sounds
would have sold
like we do
for-
not want to wade into that.
for $6 million.
As a recommendation.
Now they can only put it on the
Yeah.
market for
Yeah, I get it.
$3.5 million.
What you can do from a regulatory standpoint is relate the size of the house to the size of the property. So that you're not getting gigantic houses on tiny lots, So, I mean, we don't have any regulation on.
I thought they do, I
in
thought they do
town
on some of the
that.
zone, like residential low densities and their percentage coverage.
Yeah,
How many have actually been turned down?
I don't know.
I mean, realistically.
I don't know, I
Very few.
really.
I mean, you want to increase your coverage from 35 to, 60%. I say, give me 55, a little bit of mitigation, and we'll be fine. That's part of the problem, is that we don't have the leadership of the town
Enforcing that.
forcing or thinking
Yeah, yeah.
globally or big picture as to what's doing it. A lot of them see, oh, that's gonna be more property taxes on those big houses. And therefore, it's gonna offset the property, what is it, the 2.5, where it has to be balanced out and everything. And it probably does. If you have the larger ones, then that means that the average Joe will have to not pay as much percentage on their property taxes. But the reality is that if you look historically, which I track this stuff, if you look at the size lots we have and houses that are coming down and what's going up there, it's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. The other thing is that as far as you're incentivizing things, people are buying houses here as, oh, we love it here, but they're really buying it as an investment and a way to make money. It's sheer numbers for them. And they're not gonna wanna give it to somebody, let somebody rent it, 52 weeks a year, because they wanna come down and have their holiday here and their holiday there and everything. But in the meantime, I'm gonna charge my $5 or $6 grand a week, and then I'll have 8 cars parked out front instead of 2, et cetera, et cetera.
And the market forces are changing. I mean, a lot of that was fueled by low interest rates, and those have changed. In our remaining 15 minutes, knowing we're going to come back to housing a lot, is there any, I know it's hard, but I think we got some good potential tools to throw in there, and Karen, is working on it. Any more burning issues about housing, and then could we maybe jump into climate resilience, which kind of size of houses is sort of related to that?
One brief comment on
Please.
what Barbara said.
Close us out about housing.
Last 6 weeks, I've kept track of it. I have been texted by 7 different groups wanting to talk to me about buying my house.
Get out of
What's
here.
so nice about your house? No, I'm
have
sure it's a
no
lovely, I'm sure it's a lovely house, but what's the motivation?
handy, he knows what he's
What's
doing.
the motivation? I mean, you have no,
motivation is that there's not enough houses for sale.
So-
And
Solicitation is
the
Yeah,
real
yeah,
estate
yeah,
people are
yeah.
just trying to drum up business, because
By the way, today I got one and I asked, you know, we want to talk to you about your house. And I said, why? And who are you? And they said, we're a local group that are investing in buying houses. And
Yeah.
we-
Multi,
yeah.
a local group.
not just somebody that likes
Yeah.
your neighborhood, wants to be
But
your
this
neighbor.
wasn't,
Nope,
they
they're
weren't looking for a
investments.
listing. They
Yeah.
wanted to buy
And
the house.
they will kill the neighborhood.
It's even scarier.
Yeah.
We should put something in there about that. Beware the corporate, anyway.
But I
Because
guess-
community's important.
I do
Oh,
think
Ed,
we
you got
can't
my text
lose
message then?
focus on Focus on the governance that you brought up.
Yeah.
There's gotta be teeth into some of the rules.
So are we shifting gears to?
Can
climate?
we? I'm so proud of us. We've got 13 minutes and we're coming into climate resilience.
Can I just start by saying that I've been fairly critical of a couple of other sections here, but I really liked this.
Oh,
We took the word
wow.
from the
High
mouth.
praise.
I really like
I'll
this.
tell Ron, I'll pass it on to
You
Ron.
know why? They put freshwater ponds in here. It's in the second paragraph.
No, it's well-written and I think covers the issues
Concisely, too.
concisely, yeah.
This is called Harwich Climate Resilience.
I do like the recognition of current conditions and that it really, I think, speaks volumes as far as, we're paying attention. I like that, and it really does have to be factored in moving forward, and I really like its introduction and that it's a section that has not been, it's a new section for any kind of plan, and that it's here, and I kudos for that.
Could we, I just paid my homeowner's insurance for the year, and
Oh, yeah.
Oh, went up. Yeah.
that's a big deal. Probably something goes in here, if you wanna own a house and you wanna have homeowners, right? You have to be able to get a policy, and those are increasingly rare and increasingly expensive because of this. That's probably something that's timely to put in there.
Yeah, and as climate changes, in Florida, they just had another insurer pull out.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time.
My neighbor has been like kind of slotted into like the state supported.
Yeah.
She lost her like farmers, yeah.
We're one bad hurricane away from,
Well, Florida's a lot of self-insured.
Yeah.
It's just so expensive, they
Yeah.
just decide
Right.
to roll the dice.
Right. But if you want the pillars of our community that are here working in town, contributing in town, have a mortgage, they have to have homeowners insurance. So I think that's probably timely, something to put in there.
I was talking to a builder the other day, and one of the things that they're doing, they did redid the FEMA maps, 3 years ago, and it's finally trickling down to having to do it because all of a sudden, they're not getting reinsured, they're being canceled left and right, is that a lot of the houses along the outer Cape for sure, but he said also starting on Nantucket Sound, is that they are starting to lift them and raise them above the floodplain.
Which also affects everybody's views. They've done it in along Swan Pond, in, I would call that West Dennis, Lower
my
County.
hometown and Hull, they're doing that all over the place. Yeah.
Yep.
In Provincetown, that's become a big issue because
Oh, yeah, huge.
the
Affects the views.
water side of Commercial Street theoretically at some point will
Underground,
all of
underwater.
it will be 8 feet in the air
Yeah.
on pillars.
I also, looking at it and kind of coming back to it, is if we're saying draft policies, back to Mary's point, that Joe Harwich and Juliette Harwich understand what we're talking about. The state's MVP 2.0 and federal HMP processes are a little poorly defined and kind of, industry speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does that really mean to us?
There is, it is mentioned on page 2, in the discussion of recent actions by the town. But we actually use that MVP initiative on the first page before it's explained.
Right,
So-
right, right, right,
so,
right,
yeah,
right.
we need, just need to
Yeah.
What is it?
explain it a little better.
And I would even want to say like plan for sea rise, but like expect sea level rise, erosion and flooding.
Yeah.
Expect and plan for.
If I understand this correctly, it's more focused on flooding, which that seems to be the predominant, but windstorms are also a factor now. It's been increasing more and more. And so, is there anything in here, and again, it's all about the flooding, but we're talking about windstorms, can it actually be in there as far as goals to modify housing requirement? And we're going right back to housing again, as far as that can kind of mitigate this climate change. Case in point, after Hurricane Andrew, if you looked at the landscape, developments that built for that South Florida area, they stayed up. The other ones that didn't build to it flattened. So everyone changed their building codes and everything. I don't know if this is an appropriate section to become aware of that, to initiate it, to say be cautious, aware of that.
Yeah, it's,
Actually, we
it
do.
says
Our buil-
building codes are state,
Ah,
but it doesn't mean you can't discuss the issue. It just, it's kind of driven by state regulation.
But our building codes do address, on the Cape here, they do address the high wind and all the other issues there, because when we redid the house, it's like, we had to meet all these requirements. Like if I was sitting on the water, on Nantucket with the water, it deals with all that, and it's all absolutely required on the Cape at this point. The only thing they'll let go of in the last 10 years has been the, those coastal storm windows and stuff. They got other opportunities. But as far as windage, your roof, your tying the building down, et cetera, that is all there. And it's all
The
required.
interesting thing, coming from California, where earthquakes are the issue, actually building to a Cat 3 hurricane standard is more significant than building to a 6-point
Wow.
earthquake standard.
Interesting. Our dear to the heart issues of water, septic, housing is, I defer to the expertise of the committee. Should there be something in here about, and to Mary's point, about flooding and septic systems? So
Well,
there
yeah.
are a lot of, and Christine's saying, yeah, there's a lot of built higher, built above grade septic systems around.
If you have flooding, it's going to have an impact in terms of groundwater
Yep.
and, it's an issue, so I think.
Should probably put
part
that
of
in
the-
there.
I think when we get into draft goals, how do we want to make those preparations?
And then in town, there's the two pieces of road that are already routinely getting flooded.
Oh, let's put those in. I love some reference, remind,
North Street
North
and what, headed out of
Muddy Creek.
Muddy Creek.
Yeah.
And I think the.
North Street, contextualize North Street for me. It's
uh,
going into Bell's
On the-
Neck and West
On the
Harwich.
east side
on
of
the east
Bell's
side,
Neck.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, okay, yes, I know
Anyway,
exactly where it is,
The-
yep.
The quick study that the commission did of those two sections into town, they're like $6 and $8 million apiece to raise,
Oh, yeah.
So where,
Short
remind me of
section.
where Muddy Creek is?
where.
Pleasant Bay.
East Harwich.
Pleasant
Almost
Bay.
towards Chatham.
Got it,
I
yep,
thought that was
got it.
addressed
Drops
when
into
they
Pleasant
built
Bay.
that bridge.
Got it.
It wasn't?
No,
That's
it's
still-
below, after you go across the bridge where you get down
It
low.
still goes
Right.
down to a
Where
point.
Bay,
Right,
It's
I
on
know
Route
the area.
28.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
it's a state road,
Yeah.
so.
With regard to flooding, though, should we be concerned about any town-owned assets that are at risk?
That's part of the plan that you
Hazard
guys.
mitigation plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's being updated,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so that gets included.
We'll be referencing that in the comprehensive
It's
plan.
interesting that the new Sagatucket, thing is very high. Like the offices
Well, you
and
are,
stuff.
oh, Sagatucket, yeah.
So the housing mitigation plan, as Christine mentioned, is being updated
Mhm.
concurrently too, and that addresses critical infrastructure.
Right.
Primarily, it has a primary focus and looks at climate hazards, key, climate hazards, and identifies critical assets and their vulnerability.
Because I think that would be our obligation here with LCP, is more around the town resources, or areas like the roads that you just mentioned that impact
Mhm.
quality of life. But there's not much we can do, property by property, house by, residence by residence.
Yeah, as that
There
plan
are
is updated.
regulations that could be,
We'll be
For
able
new
to add
construction.
more.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and for substantial rehabs.
I
Greater
think
than
also
50%.
it's, part of the plan will
Still
be
personal choice, too.
looking at vulnerable populations, which we can also add, the highlight as part of this.
Our
as well.
elderly friends should be in there for this.
And we'll also have a transportation section that's also gonna talk about these issues again too, so, yeah.
With that,
Begin to see.
we are
things
3 minutes
weave
ahead of
together.
schedule.
That's where we talk
Yes,
about the
hot
shuttle
damn.
buses to the beaches. 'cause
We've
we have-
covered a lot. We are next supposed to meet on July 2nd, 5 to 7. We will have a virtual option if anyone's traveling. Expect you to wear your red, white, and blue for the committee meeting, but I think it's important we continue. We gotta just keep plowing through all this. What are our next, our coming sections? Are we gonna dig back into housing? Oh, yes, Barbara.
Are we having a session for the summer people
We need to.
that we talked about in July or August?
We're supposed to in August, right?
I think we need to.
I know, you and I both look equally enthused about this.
I think the last gonna be here in
The
August, I
committee
know it's
discussed
short
It was
term.
kind of tabled at that time,
No, I think we had left it in our minutes that we were gonna have a
Procedural.
visioning session.
Second
with-
homeowners.
Yeah, with the second homeowners. I think we said around August like 15th or something,
I
didn't we?
think we've got to be
Mid-August.
available. How many show up, you don't know.
Okay.
It depends on the marketing. I mean,
All
I'm
right.
willing to
Go to Cumbies.
go around everywhere, to hand out flyers, whatever.
Can we work on a date, maybe? You and I can work on a date about it.
Christine, are they gonna have
A
a
format too.
a seasonal homeowner meeting like
Oh, a
they used-
town meeting. That would be the time
I'm
to
not
do.
I don't know. I can
Well,
find
that
out.
might be a good
That
opportunity.
would be
Posted
the
by
place to do
That would be the
Yeah.
perfect place.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
Where?
that would be the place to do
Right, that's what I'm
Oh,
saying
right,
is.
Yeah, we would want to hitch our wagon
back on
onto
that, and
that.
that's usually in August.
Is it the
Actually,
select board?
a Board of Selectmen or Powers.
Done by the Board of Selectmen, and the last time it was actually had much of a crowd.
It did or did not?
Well, the last time I was conscious that there was much of a crowd showing up as well. 15 years ago, and we did a huge push on with the chamber and everybody to get people there. And then there was some
Yeah.
pushback by some town employees because everybody had to show up on an additional night in
Oh,
the
I get you.
summer.
Well, I get, yeah.
They cut back on the type of program, and it sort of dwindled down to 10 or 12 people showing up.
I guess I would check in if there's going to be anything at all. We'll bring our lobster hats and our leis and my belt. We'll do a little something,
That'll
something. And
I would think the same format, though. I mean, we're
Yeah.
still gathering
Yeah.
suggestions for.
And if not, then let's try to be thorough. We have to include them. Yes. So we should sometime troubleshoot for the middle of August or around there. Calendars, and then, should we tentatively set are we gonna come back to housing
Oh,
in July?
You did ask me, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay, we were diverted.
What was coming
Yes.
next?
Do we wanna do housing, or what, we put ourselves in your
Well,
hands, just so we know?
What we'll do is, take all the comments.
Yeah.
And, you'll be getting a second draft of
Yeah.
the sections that we've
Yeah.
done.
Yeah,
And then, we'll have some new sections for
Okay.
you. I'm just racking my brain.
That's
to think
okay.
which ones they are
if
right
you
now.
don't have a,
Oh,
I would,
Transportation.
okay.
We'll do, yes, transportation, like community facilities, community design.
cool.
We'll get into, you know,
Okay.
those issues
Okay.
maybe coming next.
Do you want us to tentatively plan to go through Karen's updated thing in July too? We probably
We
should,
can
right?
certainly do that. I mean, we
Probably,
just
yeah.
got the document, and
Okay.
did she share it with you today?
I
Was that-
have not seen it
Oh,
yet.
okay,
Alright.
she was supposed to send to Christine also.
Okay.
I'm happy to
We
share it
can-
as a draft, and then, we're meeting internally next week to
Sure.
talk about
Sure.
rollout of that.
Sure.
So we can, potentially do that in
We
July.
can decide that, but kind of, my thought would be that we, thank you for the second drafts, but we'll leave them behind us for a little bit, and then, but just, we're trying to get through the whole thing,
Exactly,
and then
right,
come back.
yeah.
Okay. So July 2nd, more of the same.
Who do we send the marked up comments?
So I think you may have missed some of it. We started the meeting with, that's okay, no, it's all good. We're starting a new little process.
I was here
Oh,
for
for the
that.
PDF page, yep.
But what about the comments that
I think
we
we
had
have
for
them.
tonight? You don't
We-
have,
we have them.
I sent you mine only last night.
Just send them to Sharon and
Oh,
Christine.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I sent them your yellow legal pad ones from the airplane.
From the airplane, flying to Anchorage. I was
sent
working
them.
on this thing.
Anything we missed?
Adjourn.
I just want to make one comment that you have the most patient son in the world.
Really
yeah.
good hit over there, right?
I think you should get some chocolate, maybe ice cream?
At
What
least-
were
at
you,
least an ice
what were you
cream.
reading for the public record? What were you reading?
Calvin and Hobbes, that was my favorite
From the,
growing up too.
from the Brooks Free Library,
That's
from
awesome.
Librarian Ann, so pretty wholesome over there. We do, that's what I was referencing, the horse rides, yes.
Quick
Thank-
FYI,
yes.
I did have a follow-up with the ministers.
Oh, lovely.
Back in early May. So I think, still continuing to work with the constituent groups is a good thing for it. So,
It's awesome. Do we have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Who's the first?
Third.
Cool. You were the first.
No, I can't.
Oh.
I
And
motion
then-
to adjourn.
We'll see you all on the interwebs, and we'll see you July 2nd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank